Today we are here to hear a very interesting paper and presentation from Fabrizio Esposito, who is assistant professor in private law at the Nova School of Law. He coordinates a lot of groups. First of all, he coordinates the Master in Laws and in Business Law and Technology and the Data-Driven Knowledge Center, and he had a lot of publications and research in the area of private law and technology and other fields of law. And today he's presenting a very interesting paper and work on price personalization and the GDPR. And so I'm very glad to have the opportunity to listen to Fabrizio. Thank you.
Thank you, Chiara. One small technical problem. I am not enabled to share the slides. If you can, I think if you make me co-host, then that would be solved.
Yes. I make you co-host.
Right. So in the meantime, so thank you for the kind presentation. I hope that I will be able to live up to the expectations. Since I knew that this would be a small group, what I have, I tried to innovate my PowerPoint presentation. So I learned how to do links between different parts of the presentation. So the idea is that I would like to go through the first layer of ideas, where uncontested, uncontested, all the pieces fit together and lead to the outcome that I would like to justify. And then maybe during the discussion, I go back to these additional layers to develop some points that make that idea more, that substantiate that idea a little bit more. So now you see legal issues arising from networks. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So great. So this is essentially what I am interested in right now. So there has been a lot of attention on academic attention on the concept of price personalization. Also at the policy level in the European Union, we have a dedicated information requirement that was introduced by the Modernization Directive. And I got interested into this topic because it connected very well with my previous research. And what I would like to discuss today with you is essentially the fact that simply being informed, as the European Union has suggested, that the price is that is displayed is personalized, falls very short of what we actually need to turn price personalization in a desirable element of the digital environment, and unfortunately, or for good, for the good, in the foreseeable future also of retail markets in the physical world. And I'm happy to discuss that as well. So the idea is that if we are granted these three rights, all the most significant concerns that we have about price personalization, specifically price personalization, are handled. Okay, so the right to be offered an integer impersonal price, so a price that is not based on your personal data and at the same time has some additional features that make it reliable, reliable in the sense that it is a price that is meaningful, a price that the seller is actually using for performing actual transactions. It is not simply put there to be used as a baseline for then personalizing your price, the other prices. This impersonal price has to be known to the prospective consumer, and it has to be known easily. And then you need to know, you need not only to know, but also to be granted the opportunity of choosing the impersonal price. And one may wonder then why simply not prohibiting price personalization. Well, we will get there. But first, I would like to have this layer where I tell you with a little bit more detail what I mean by these free rides. So the background assumption, and this is important for seeing how, for example, China has been regulating price personalization way more in detail than in Europe, but because the element related to dark patterns has not been taken into consideration or is not being enforced, that is not entirely clear to me. The outcome is still not very satisfactory there as well. So the integer impersonal price, the concern, and this is a concern that economists raise all the time, is, oh, but then if you force me to have an impersonal price and then to make explicit how much I'm personalizing pricing, you know what I'm going to do? I'm simply going to charge an extremely high impersonal price, and then all the personalized prices that I offer are discounts. Okay, so the idea here would be that to the extent that this concern is theoretically sound, we need to at least start thinking, although we might not need to introduce specific legislation on the matter in the early future, we still need to start thinking about how to deal with this concern. And here the general principle is that for example, one very simple rule would be to say, okay, so you have sold in the last 6 months, you have sold this many units of the product, and you have made this many revenues. So the price that you need to use as the impersonal price is the revenue divided units price that you have applied to everyone. So that if essentially, if you have set the price at 100 and then you have applied a discount of at least 10% to everyone, then the price cannot be higher than 90. This simple rule, however, is a little bit tricky to investigate in how it would work in practice, and I have decided not to look into that further, simply because there is theoretical concern that this is happening, but since we are very far from a system that works in the way in such a way that this risk becomes measurable, for the moment I am not investigating this point further. However, a more sophisticated regulatory framework that is already in place and does something similar. We have it, especially in Italy. We have a very sophisticated system for calculating the usury interest rate. So it is, so to the objection that oh my God, it is so complicated, we cannot really do it. The reply is, we're doing it for interest rates. If technology makes things more granular, then it has to make things more granular. Economic and regulatory practices more granular, not only for the business side, but also on the regulatory side. So we should not be afraid of considering regulatory interventions that are very demanding in terms of data collection, because this is in a way the whole point of the whole idea behind this series of seminars is that we need to face the new reality with there is a lot of data that is being generated and is out there. Now, one simple way to implement the right to know the impersonal price, and this is where according to my understanding, which is subject to verification, okay? The Chinese regulatory framework has failed is that it has introduced the right to know the impersonal price, but it has not made it clear that they need to be known at the same time, right? So what I am showing here with very low technical skills is the idea that you are offered, you are being told, this is the impersonal price, and this is the personal price, okay? Much like if you think about it, when you go on many websites, there is a price and then you are being told, oh, this is the price for you because I'm applying a discount of X%, right? That is already based on the basis of voluntary disclosure. So websites can be already designed easily in order to accommodate that kind of information. So it doesn't seem to me to be something that is rocket science. And then you need to make an additional step. So you need to create two buttons, right? 2x buttons, where you say, this is the impersonal price, and the other one where you say, if I go like this, you see also my mouse? Do you see my mouse now? Okay. So this is the impersonal price, and this is the personalized price. And then you may say, okay, but who is going to choose the personalized price? That is a very good point. And the reason why I like to make these kind of examples is that we are normally thinking about retail markets where we have a very individualistic understanding of what is going on, but we shall not rule out the possibility that within a properly designed regulatory framework, the trader is capable in a really concise manner, because it is in its interest to do so, to tell you why Fabrizio, who has these and those characteristics, should pay more than Chiara for that product. If they have a good reason for that, and probably this will have to do with some other regarding preferences of some sort, then I do not really see I do not see why it would be unfair for this consumer who is given an explanation of why he or she should pay more, and is given the option to easily pay less. He or she chooses to pay more, fine by me, but happy to discuss that. Now, there is a lot of background assumptions in this discussion. Some of these background discussions are going to be less contested because Mireia is not here and we disagree on this point. The first one is about the normative framework. So what is the normative goal that we should use in order to identify the regulatory ideal that we intend to achieve? Traditional law in economics would say total welfare, which then restricts, as we will see, the series of concerns that we have about price personalization. I say consumer sovereignty, which should be operationalized in terms of consumer welfare, which then means that some of the concerns become particularly relevant in the context of price personalization. Another background assumption is that in the reality of digital markets today, it is normal for traders to be able to design their websites in ways that allow them to exercise some situational bargaining power that makes it possible to personalize prices to the detriment of the consumer. We will see if we are capable of introducing really anti-dark patterns regulation. This might change, but for the moment, this means that price personalization to the detriment of the consumer, which is not necessarily problematic from a total welfare perspective, but is very problematic from the perspective that I am adopting, is a real possibility. Then, and this one I'm gonna look at already. The reason why we should not simply ban price personalization is because especially when we are dealing with traders that have some degree of bargaining power, so they have the capacity to influence prices, they might actually end up in a mechanism of enhanced competition. So consumers that were not contestable become now more contestable thanks to price personalization, and consumers who may not have been able to access a product before because the market price was above their willingness to pay might selectively be targeted so that the trader can sell to them without having to lower the price to everybody else. So these are beneficial effects for consumers and for the openness of markets. Um, we cannot rule out the possibility that somebody will be able to come up with very innovative business models that are based on price personalization, as I was suggesting before. So we cannot really rule out also that possibility. With regard to the reasons for concern, there is a general concerns about the bias of the algorithm and how the price discrimination could actually not be could be detrimental to certain groups, and this is a more general concerns that we have about data collection. So I do not consider it to be central to this kind of analysis. Exploitation of consumers is a central concern unless you adopt a traditional loan economics perspective, and then it is harder to squeeze it in. Waste, waste, what can be wasted a lot by the practice of price personalization? A lot of resources can actually be wasted by price personalization, if you think about it, because there is a lot of code that is being created to collect this data. There is a lot of energy that is being put into the research that is needed to perform this practice, and to the extent that this is meant to exploit consumers, this should count as a first dimension of social waste, because it is not meant to increase efficiency, but also to appropriate rents. Another significant source of costs has to do with all the practice, and this is an excellent book on this topic, all the practice that we as consumers might want to take into, might want to introduce in order to resist personalization practices. And of course, all this time counts as a waste. And then what is also wasted is the energy of those people who are trying to develop business models based on big data analysis, because the quality of the data sets that are collected is lowered. So you also have a chilling effect. So there is a significant reason to be concerned by price personalization, but unfortunately, or actually not unfortunately, analytically unfortunately, it would have been way easier if the column of the cons was full and the column of the pros was empty, because then we could have simply prohibited the practice. But that is not the reality we live in, so we need to be a little bit more, a little bit smarter than that. A background assumption that I also want to share with you is that the impersonal price is not something that we have always used. It is something that was introduced for several reasons that mostly had to do with the internal management of the retail industry in the 20th century. And this is all true, but it does, and sometimes this is used to say we shouldn't be concerned by price personalization because some discrimination among consumers has always been part of market mechanisms, and therefore it is normal, and therefore there is nothing to be worried about. Almost everything that I just said is correct, but the conclusion does not hold, for the simple fact that, yes, there has always been discrimination, but in a bargaining environment. If you are in a situation where only the trader has the advantage of personalizing the prices, then you are recreating again a situation of asymmetry, which is at the core of the concerns of the modern market regulation. So we should not see too much into the relative novelty of impersonal prices. And connected to that, there is, and I'm happy to go back to this, there is also my recent research on the right to the impersonal price is the basis of the presentation that I'm giving today, in the sense that the regulatory framework that I will show you in the next slide is based on the assumption that the right to the impersonal price exists. And this is not something that is, of course, a universe. I'm not presenting this as a human right. I am simply saying that in the contingent legal framework that we have in the European Union, and in particular, given certain requirements that the GDPR imposes on the processing of personal data, combined with very reasonable assumptions about the need to protect the economic interest of consumer in their capacity of data subjects. You put this together, you shake it, and what you get as a result is the right to the impersonal price. So now I want to build on this right. So what we have here is a decisional tree. Okay, so if we follow, the idea is that we follow this diagram, and we are going to encounter at several points several problems. So the desire is to arrive here. Okay, because if we manage to arrive here, then we have created a regulatory framework where price personalization is used and consumers are not exploited, and they trust more the regulatory environment, and they are therefore willing to share their data for the purpose of personalizing prices. It is important that traders have access to our data, because that is important for them to innovate. And one thing that I'm probably not the only one that I do is I am right now irritated by the poor quality of the privacy policies, and I always reject everything. I'm not checking carefully if they're going to analyze my data for the purpose of offering me a personalized price. I simply reject everything. And the more people do this, the more significant becomes the risk of having chilling effects. And one additional element that is specific to price personalization is that there is a lot of research. So there is, of course, conflicting empirical research on the matter, but a lot of empirical research shows that consumers are really irritated by the simple fact that the price is personalized. So whether this is really true or not, it might still be sufficient for a trader to decide not to risk it. And since we have said that this can actually be beneficial to consumer, here we have another layer of chilling effects. Now, the framework that I am thinking about does not address chilling effects directly. It only addresses them indirectly, in the sense that it creates a more trustworthy environment from the perspective of consumers, where I hope that they would be more, I expect them to be more inclined to share their data. Now, the first very important question is the trader going to commit to offer only personalized discounts? And we do have some example of this going on. In also, and this is very important in this kind of matters, in a concise and easy to understand way. Okay, so when this is a basic law and economics insight, when it is in the interest of the traders to implement certain disclosures, they will do it properly. Now we ask, if the trader commits to do that, then our only concern, the only concern that remains, is that it might start applying artificially high impersonal prices, right? So if we go back to this example, fine, Skyscanner is not using personalized prices to inflate the price that you see, but maybe start setting all the impersonal prices at 1,000 euros for every flight, including Barcelona, Lisbon, and then it starts applying discounts. That would be consistent with its commitments. So we need, and that's why something is needed also here. We need to be wary of this kind of concern. But worse, it gets way worse if the trader does not commit to that. If the trader does not commit, then we need to understand the situation from the perspective of the consumer, especially if we look at the information requirement introduced by the European legislator. What the European legislator simply says is, you have the right to be informed that the price was personalized. So the question is, if I tell you, oh, Chiara, the price for you is 105, and this price was personalized, period. What information do we get from that? And this is important because by the same principle that leads us to expect that traders who want to use price personalization to your advantage, only to apply discounts. So if some traders, considering that traders want you to know that they have personalized the price to your advantage, when that happens, they are going to tell you. So are we going to be able to say, oh, this price is personalized and they're not telling me what the impersonal price is? Am I going to be normally able to infer that there is something fishy going on there? If not, then I am at peril of exploitation, right? If I do, then there are certain things that I can do. I can, for example, I can obfuscate my data presence online, but that we go back to the problem we said before, that this can create chilling effect, and we are not even entirely sure that these will lead to beneficial outcome for the consumer. Then what is this consumer going to do about this price? Is this consumer going to be able to resist this price? So we know that if you really press the GDPR, it kind of give you the possibility to be offered the impersonal price, but it takes so many steps that it clearly counts as a dark pattern. And it is likely that many people will simply say, okay, you know what? It is still better to buy at this inflated price in comparison to go through these steps, or to buy from the best alternative offer. So we need to do something more. We need to make it easy for the consumer to choose the impersonal price in this kind of situations. And it is at this point that we go back, that the two branches of the tree meet each other, and we land to the final concern, which is the integrity of the impersonal price. If we manage to go here, we have won, but it is a bit hard to get there. So how does the Bill of Rights help? So the Bill of Rights, as I said, builds on the idea that the impersonal price has to exist. Traders cannot simply say, oh, but I do not offer an impersonal price. They have to calculate it. And if they have to calculate it and to offer it, then we can use it. So we can make it easy for consumers to understand if the price they are seeing was personalized or not. And if it was personalized, whether it was personalized upward or downward. But once we have made it clear for them that the price they are seeing is personalized to their disadvantage, we also need to do something more. We need to give them the right to choose their personal price, because if they do not have that right, knowing that they have been offered a higher personalized price does not really help them improving their situation. And then the last concern, the one that is more theoretical at the moment, will require, and there is no way around it, will require an additional layer of regulation. And maybe it will make sense for this layer of regulation to happen first at the nation level, and this is possible, I would say, under because the price indication directive is a minimum harmonization directive, and then see which member state comes up with the smartest idea, and perhaps then extend that throughout the union. So this is the first and second layer of the presentation. Thank you for your valuable attention that has been collected by LiaNs, but not by me yet. And do not hesitate to reach out in the future. And now, please tell me what you think about what I just presented.
I open the floor for questions and comments.